ठीक है,
जी सर स्टार्ट।
स्टार्ट कर दिया।
जी सर स्टार्ट हो गया।
अभी तो आवाज़ आ नहीं रही।
हाँ सर आएगी सर, आप बोलते रहे, बात आ रही है।
हेलो। Today's class topic is financing strategies for poverty alleviation. My lecture will have two parts. After brief introductory remarks about state's role and the impact of public policies, I will take up Pakistan as a case study because I have been working here for the last 35 years and see where it stands today after 73 years of independence and why. While studying the causes of poverty, social scientists focus attention on issues like what does the state mean to the common man? How are citizens in their everyday life affected by public policies and development strategies? Is the state supportive of their causes? Is it impartial or hostile? How does the state allocate resources to different classes? Keeping the above parameters in view, we can place government policies into four categories. One, policies which bestow crucial advantages on the already rich and protect vested interests. As a corollary, the poor remain poor or become poorer. B, policies which create physical and social infrastructure and help in reducing poverty indirectly, directly as well as indirectly. C, direct subsidies to the poor in the name of poverty alleviation. And lastly, policies which create enabling circumstances for the people to grow to their full potential. Having said that, I will come to Pakistan. Pakistan became independent in 1947 and started moving towards development, social as well as physical infrastructure. Pakistan is an interesting case study. In the initial 25 years or 30 years, it did well. Maybe it was the impact of the colonial policies which we continue to follow in administration and other things. But what we find today, after 70 years of independence, that we are lagging behind almost in everything. And to understand this position, I will take four areas. Number one, the poverty levels, and then I will come to health, education and housing. If we talk of poverty in Pakistan, today in 2020, 35% people are living below poverty line. Out of 35, I think 10% are absolutely poor. They are barely surviving. And if you look the poverty level as a whole, I think 60% people in Pakistan survive on $2 a day. And only there is a small middle class, and only 2% people can be called rich. This is the poverty level in Pakistan today, after 3 years of independence. But it is surprising and interesting both that we had cycles of development for 3 decades intermittently, where the growth rate was about 5 to 6%. But it was not sustainable. The growth rate was high because of certain factors which we can't recount here, but that depends. You see, if you look at the Cold War era or Pakistan relationship with the United States, when we got a lot of financial assistance from United States of America and the World Bank. Now coming back to the other part of our backwardness, that is the Human Development Index. If 60% people are living on $2 a day, what is the condition of Human Development Index? I think we are at serial number 138 out of maybe 200 countries. And especially the health sector is very poor so far as maternal mortality, infant mortality is concerned. Even immunization is not done to all the population. They are not immunized, the whole population. Similarly, in education, our literacy rate is hardly 55% after 73 years. And currently, half of the children can't go to primary schools. Half of the children can't go to primary school. Their number may be 25 million or 24 million. And those who go to primary school, half of them drop out before they reach class 5. And even those who remain in these schools, their standard of education is very poor. Hardly 4 to 5% children can go to colleges and universities. And similarly, the technical education is very poor or absent. So that is the condition of education. And now, if we move forward and see what is the condition of housing in Pakistan. Currently, there is a backlog of 10 million houses in Pakistan. And incrementally we need 400,000 more houses every year. Since there is a huge backlog, 35% of urban population is living in squatter settlements. We call them Kachi Abadis, some of them are slums, whatever name you may give, but 35% people are living in Kachi Abadis. And the living condition in Kachi Abadis, you can well imagine poor sanitary conditions, lack of potable water supply, lack of affordable transport, not only for them, but other people also in cities. And similarly, education, health facilities are absent, and people try to manage these things themselves, or some NGOs or Friends Office come forward to run schools, and some young doctors go there, practice on commercial basis and provide basic health facilities. But primary health care, primary education at government level is absent. So this is the condition of Kachi Abadis, where 35% urban population lives. So the question arises, why Pakistan has not been able to improve things in the last 73 years, when the growth rate was about 5 to 6%. I think the basic reason is that in Pakistan from the very beginning there has been an elite capture. There is an oligarchy of people, join hands, in which the bureaucrats, the military, the feudal lords, the hand-picked industrialists, and even professionals, they join hands and they capture uh, the state policies and allocation of resources. That was the basic reason. It continues even today. In our National Assembly, I think 75% people belong to these categories. The poor people who live in Kachiabadis or in rural areas, who are landless people or industrial labor, they are not represented in the National Assembly or even the provincial assemblies. The policy making power is in the hands of this oligarchy. And then another basic reason from my point of view is that our founding fathers, while making development policies for the country, they did not follow the sequence of development which would have resulted in development. What they did was, what they gave us was industrial development without adequate agriculture development. Pakistan was an agriculture country. Hardly 15% lived in urban areas, but agriculture was ignored, and we focus our attention, our founding fathers, industrial development without adequate agriculture development. There were no land reform initially. Land was not given to landless people, and the feudal lords continued to have big chunks of land, and most of it was not being cultivated even. And secondly, what they did was, they focused attention on large scale industry without prior development of small scale industry. So how can you run large scale industry if you don't have small scale or medium scale industry? And then what we saw was the third reason: urbanization outpacing industrialization. People started coming to the cities, or they were pushed out of the rural areas because there were no jobs available, and industrialization was not going that fast. You see, for some period there was rapid industrialization because large number of concessions were given to hand-picked industrialists who did not invest their own money. They depended on government support for everything. They got land free, they got infrastructure free, they had protected market, and they had big loans from the banks. But after some time the industry started failing, and before 1970 there was large scale unemployment, and even before that people were coming to the cities, but they were becoming part of informal sector. And lastly, population growth racing ahead of employment growth. You see, no attention was paid to the high population growth rate. I think in mid-60s, one of the military dictator focused attention on population planning programs, but there was no seriousness about that after he was, shunted out. And for the last 30-40 years, our rate of growth has been 2% per annum, which is the highest even in this region. You can well imagine, right? We started with 3.5 crores and now we are 22 crores. So this is you see the basic fault of not following the sequence of development which could have produced results. So this was number 2. And then poor planning and delivery system, that was also responsible for poor infrastructure and the resources which were allocated, however small. Poor planning and delivery system was not. And So to the social sector was ignored from the very beginning. We spend hardly 2% on education and similarly on health. And huge resources are spent on defense. And because we have been taking loans from the international market and at domestic level, if you look at, for example, our revenue income, I think 3 or 4 heads of account, like defense, debt servicing, expenditure on bureaucracy, on intelligence services like that, whole revenue income is spent and very little amount is available for social sector. And even if the amount is small, the planning is poor and there is no micromanagement at the lower level. So these are 4 factors which kept us, you see, backward and continues to impact the life of the poor people. So I think we have covered the current condition of Pakistan, but let me add that Pakistan is not a resource poor country. Pakistan has ample natural resources, like you see we have big rivers, we have an integrated canal system, we have vast areas for agriculture, flatland, mountainous areas, different type of climates all the year round, starting from sea coast to the northern areas where you see and we can grow almost everything. Almost everything can be grown in Pakistan. Water is there. The people are energetic, hardworking, patriotic, and they don't demand much. So why this poverty? I think you must understand that this poverty is not because of natural causes or a result of some accident. This is the man-made, you see, mismanagement which has kept Pakistan very poor. And now we move towards the housing thing, because I think the paper I had sent for the circulation in this class, you must have read it, and housing is my main subject, and I have been working two areas of two problem areas. One is why the Kachi Awadis emerged, what is this phenomenon, and what can be done. So as I said, 35% people live in Kachi Awadis in Pakistan. Initially, I think the Kachi Awadis started taking shape because there were 2 or 3 important things which happened in the history of Pakistan. One was the partition of India. A large number of people came to urban areas from India, and there was not much of housing available at that time. And then we framed industrial policy which attracted people because large number of workers were also needed to run the industry. And then we faced the debacle of East Pakistan when half of the country was gone and large number of people came from East Pakistan to the western part. Then there was Afghan crisis and 3 million Afghan people came to Pakistan, and some people came from Iran also. But apart from it, the growth of population was very high, and government policies or allocation of resources did not keep pace with the increase in population. So 35 people coming to the cities was a huge number. A large number of people coming to the cities was a major problem, and ultimately it became 35%. And I have explained in detail how this phenomenon took shape. And I will not go into the detail, but I will focus my attention on the government policies and why they were not successful in in resettling these people. You see, initially the government of Pakistan, with the support of some donors, tried to provide accommodation to most of the people who came from India in the early part of our history. But then, early 70s, the policy changed and they started following the sight-in services approach which was propagated by the World Bank and their advisors. And again, I will not go into the detail of sight-in services, but I will deal with the public policies dealing with the Kachi Abadis. Kachi Abadis initially were taken as a, you see, iska at the, you see, at the beautiful face of the cities. They were, you see, a stigma for the cities, that these people are occupying footpaths, playgrounds, hospital compounds, and they should be removed from the cities. For a number of years, these people were removed. When rainy season came, for example, they were removed from the city centers and thrown out. They were not accepted as, you see, genuine, bona fide residents of the city. But since the accommodation was not available, they would come back again. So, Kachi Abadis were not accepted as a reality. The policy makers, the economists, they thought this is an aberration. This can be controlled by removing them or treating it as a law and order question or encroachment by the people. I think it was in early 70s that one of the political leaders, who is a populist leader, Mr. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, he accepted this reality. And he said, I will provide housing to all people, whether they are Kachi Abadi or additional population which is coming to the cities. But he was soon thrown out. And the policy which, the slogan which he had given was not implemented properly. But surprisingly, his successor was a military dictator who hanged him. He continued to follow this policy. And Kachi Abadis were soon accepted as a reality, and detailed policies were made for the rehabilitation of Kachi Abadi dwellers. And it started, I think, in 79. But the speed and the concept which was developed was deeply flawed. The speed was very slow, and it was not taken as a socio-economic issue. It was taken as an engineering issue, that you may have more money, make houses, and then regularize these Kachi Abadis, maybe for free, and do not involve people in the decision making. So these things started at the municipal level. For example, in Karachi, Hyderabad and Sakkar, which are three major cities in Sindh where I worked, they were given support from the government, and they were directorates of Kachi Abadis or Directorate General of Kachi Abadis, and they started their work. But since there was no clear concept how it could be done and how it could be done easily and speedily, things moved very slowly. And lo and behold, then Asian Development Bank came in. They thought this was the question of a lack of money. So they entered into an agreement with, for example, government of Sindh. They said we will provide the money which can be used as a seed money, and the infrastructure can be developed, and before that the regularization work should start. But as I said, the socio-cultural, socio-economic issues were ignored, and the clear-cut concept was not developed. How it will be done, what will be the problems, should the people be removed from Kachi Awadis to other places, and then the infrastructure should be developed? Should there be multi-story buildings in places of Kachi Awadis? So there were things like that. And how planning would be done, how documentation would be done, that was missing. The work was started and it remained very slow. Finally, in 87, Sindh Kachi Awadi Authorities was created for Sindh because the problem was very acute in Karachi, Hyderabad and other cities of Sindh. So this Kachi Awadi Authority remained dysfunctional for 5 years. They also didn't have the idea how it will be done because they got money from the Asian Development Bank. They focused attention on purchasing vehicles, air conditioners, recruiting staff, and they were sitting idle. Then finally, I was sent there as Director General, and because I was working with Dr. Hamid Khan, he said this problem has to be studied properly, and there will be 2 parts of it, or 3 parts. One, regularization, and second, upgradation of Kachi Awadi. But he said the basic thing will be that it will be self-financing, because when there is an authority created by government, it has to run on self-financing basis. But unfortunately in Pakistan, the tradition is that they depend on government money, they become like a government department, and they work like a government department. But Akhtar Mir Khan was my teacher, my mentor. He said you have to show that it can be done, because he was already working in Orangi on sanitation issues, and he said the sanitation problem can be taken care of by the Orangi staff because they had developed, expertise in that. So I became Director General Sindh Kachi Awadi Authority and started working on the regularization. So where did we start? We start from reviewing the existing, the prevalent practices which was available in Karachi, Hyderabad and Sakkar. And then we studied the whole thing afresh. How it is done? What is the procedure, for example? In government, in Pakistan and in most other developing countries, the procedures are very cumbersome. They are different. The requirement of unnecessary papers, evidence, etc., etc. So while studying the whole problem, we reduce the procedure, we will improve the procedure and reduce the number of steps. Then we decided that there will be training of the staff afresh. Documentation is the basic thing, because the documentation which was either missing or flawed, that was the major bottleneck. If you do not have a plan, if you do not know how many lanes are there, how many houses are there, whether they are double-story or single-story, what is the commercial area like? If there is no documentation, how can you start your work? And even if you start your work in right earnest, you will get stuck up. So, afresh, we started documentation of Kachi Awadi, and then we decided that there will be no centralization in Kachi Awadi Authority. In Pakistan, there is a disease, I call it a disease, over centralization. Whether it is federal level, provincial level, or local level, we have at national level, we have an inverted pyramid. Most of the things are with the central government, and something is given to the provincial, and nothing is given to local government. You get my point? Only recently we had an amendment in the constitution which gave some powers to to the provinces, and but even now the resource allocation is not properly given, and unfortunately in Pakistan the local level, which should be the most important level, is missing from the constitution itself. So we said there will be no centralization, at least in our authority. Most of the things will be done at that local, at the Kachiabadi level, because centralization means everything comes to the Director General, and Director General, you see, he will have to sign every paper. It takes time. So we said there will be no central. This will be decentralized thing. And secondly, we said that Kachiabadi residents will not need to come to the Directorate General, the authorities directorate, because our team will go there, and they will talk to them, sit with them, and see their problems, and use the community organizations which are there. So we have to gain the trust of the people, because in Pakistan again we find there is a mistrust between government and the people. People don't trust government. Government announces something and they don't believe it. We say you have to go there, sit in the community organization offices. Luckily, in every Kachiabadi, there is a community organization which keep on working for certain things. For example, they keep on lobbying also for regularization and provision of infrastructure, education, health. So we said we have to use their offices. Our staff will go there, sit there, and when you see documentation is proper, we will display the maps in the community office. And you see, explain to them that this is the map. If you have any objection, please file the objection. And then the fourth thing was that we said people will not be removed Kachiabadis for regularization. Kachiabadi regularization will be as if, you see, as it where is basis. But we will have an amelioration plan. A plan which shows that if there are any bottlenecks, for example, any road is being, there is a curve in the road, or there is a dead end in the middle of the road, it will be removed. And we told the people that this is for interest, that these things are straightened. All people will not be removed. No one will be removed unnecessarily. We will make a plan, show it to the people, and say, okay, these things are necessary. For example, if there is a drain going and there is a bottleneck, the drain is necessary for, draining out the water. And people accepted it. So that was the basic, point in our plan. And then we carried out the survey of infrastructure as well. Because generally it is thought, and our planners also thought, our economists also thought, that Kachiabadis are without any infrastructure. They live sands, water supply, roads, electricity, sewerage. We carried out a survey of Kachiabadis from this point of view also, and we found, it's very interesting, that in most Kachiabadis, we focus our attention on four things. Number one, sewerage. Number two, water supply. Number three, electricity. Number four, roads. And since our approach was self-financing, we had to be very careful what services we can provide and at what cost. So our teams carried out surveys of these Kachiabadis with the help of Orangi pilot project staff. And what we found was that in most Kachiabadis, electricity was already there. And most of the Kachiabadis did not demand roads, because you see it was flat land. And water supply was also arranged by councillors or some other local funds. So what remains was sewerage and drainage, because most of these Kachi Abadis lacked disposal systems. In the lanes there were open drains, but those open drains did not dispose of water at the end. So when we carried out survey and when we talked to the people that what do you need here? They said, most of them said, we need a disposal system. So that is another story. I will come back to it because that is about the infrastructure. But while talking of regularization, as I said, when we clearly laid down and we compared it with the government or the municipal approach, there were a number of steps. Number of steps I think I have written in my paper that in government it was not clear how would they regularize, what steps will be necessary, what proof will be necessary, what will be the cut-off date, etc., etc. What will be the rate for a single-story house and what will be the rate for a double-storied house, what will be the lease rate. When I am saying rate, we have to charge money for cost of land. So I explain again that for regularization, the most of the Kachi Abadis, or 100% Kachi Abadis, are on state land. The state had fixed a price for the land which was occupied by Kachi Abadis. That had to be paid, number one. And secondly, there was some upgradation needed, as I explained before. And thirdly, the administrative cost. There were three items which were, which were necessary to find finances for. So we fixed the rate for Kachi Abadis according to the location. If they were, for example, if they were in very near the posh area, the rate will be higher. If they were far off from the city center, the rate will be lower. Okay? And the smaller plot, the rate will be lower. For bigger plot, rate will be higher. So we told the people that this money which we are getting as from you as the cost of lease will have three parts. One, we have to pay cost of land to the government, which has been fixed. Secondly, we will provide infrastructure wherever it is needed, but in that the people will be consulted and it will be done in their supervision. They will have to certify, yes, this work has been done. And third, the cost of administration. So when we announced this regularization and our teams started going, we were surprised that within 6 months, the Sindh Kachi Abadi Authority became self-financing. If you look at, for example, for 5 years, what were they doing? Because they didn't do anything or they were doing provisional things, they were in total income for 5 years for 1.5 billion. But in our case, within 6 months, we got 15 million rupees and we were paying salaries to our staff of our own fund. We were carrying out surveys with our own fund. Our staff was going to the Kachi Abadis, and then we started infrastructure development also. And infrastructure development is another subject which needs to see focus in other areas also. The problem is, which we saw, that if it is an international loan, for example, and you are putting a hand pump, international loan, a program for hand pumps. The hand pump will cost 35,000. Example, even UNICEF or other agencies will provide such loans or grants, 35,000. If it is being done by the government, it will cost 10,000. But if the people are doing it themselves, it will cost only 2,000. That is the difference. Because international loan involves so many other costs also that it become very international uh, tenders and consultants and big contractors. And if the government is doing it, you see there is huge amount of corruption involved at every step. And then the quality of work is very low, the time frame is very high. So if there is a small project, it may take 2 years, 3 years, and the cost will be at least 30 to 40% higher than the actual cost. So we adopted a new approach. We said, okay, we will do it with the help of the communities, with the help of OPP. They will make the design estimates, we purchase the material from the market, our engineer will supervise things, and then when it is done, the people will certify that it is working all right. And the concept were very, you see, creative, because whatever is to be done, whatever is necessary is to be done, no unnecessary thing. Because in government projects, unnecessary things are added to increase the cost. So if the cost is high, the rate of, you see, the amount of corruption is also high. So if we juxtapose the government regularization work, the government infrastructure development, there is huge difference between Sindh Kachi Abadi and their work. And surprisingly, Sindh Kachi Abadi Authority is a government department, a government authority, not a department, it is a government authority. So generally there is a perception in Pakistan that government can't deliver. Public authorities can't deliver. There is a general perception. But we show to the people that public sector can deliver. And it reduce costs and with public participation. You see, people are excluded from decision making. The problem with our planning, designing, completion of work, whatever level, health, education, housing is, that the planning is done by the people who are sitting far away, who do not know what are the needs of the people, what are their preferences, what are their priorities. For example, if we leave, you see Kachi Abadi on one side, let us take a primary school. A primary school, you see when the government spends on money on primary education, how does it plan? You see, there will be some money, whether it has come from outside or it's local funding. The money is there, it will be allocated to the provinces, okay? And then provinces, they have their assemblies, they have their members. They will call the members of the district and say, where do you want this primary school? And that member of the assembly, you see, not taking care of the need of the people, he will indicate the site where the school is needed. And in some cases we have seen that at one place the at least 3 schools were already there, but he wanted another school because he wanted to appoint some people as teachers from his own constituency. So when this allocation, this site selection is faulty, and then when the question of appointing teachers, a teacher who is living 500 miles away from the site, he will be appointed, for example, the policy makers who are sitting in Karachi, they will try to appoint teachers of their own choice, sometimes on the choice of MPA or Member National Assembly or provincial. So teachers will be appointed after 3 years of the completion of building, and then that building will not be, equipped with all the furniture, etc. And meanwhile, the building will start collapsing, and it will take maybe 5 years to start a school at a wrong location. Maybe the children, won't come there. So, but if the planning is done properly, if the communities are taken on board and they are asked, where do you want the school? Do you want a girls' school or a boys' school? Do you want a secondary school or a primary school? And do you have educated girls or boys who can be appointed teachers? And then those teachers are trained properly, and there is proper supervision of their, of their presence by the community itself. Because if the community selects the site, if they select the teachers, they will take the responsibility of running the school properly. And that's how the dropout rate would drop automatically. But this is not being done. We have a large number of buildings lying vacant in Pakistan, whether they are primary school buildings, whether they are basic health units, health centers, community halls, etc. Because they were at wrong places, and the people who ran them, they had no interest in them. So scarce resources allocated for primary health, primary education, and for example housing, they go waste. Most of the money is either stolen, wasted, or remain, unused. So this is the tragedy of our development and planning, and that's why Pakistan remains a backward country, a poor country, where Human Development Index, which should have been given priority on everything. What our ruling classes have been doing, they have gone from mega projects. They want to have showpieces. Okay, motorways, highways, big airports, mega projects. They are needed to win the elections and to make money. So Human Development Index is going down. It is going down and down now, and population is increasing tremendously every year. So these are some of the basic things which I wanted to highlight. And lastly, I would say, when things don't work, in normal planning and development paradigm, then our rulers and even the donors, they start, talking of poverty alleviation. Because today's topic is financing strategies for poverty alleviation. Poverty should not be there, number one. Poverty should be removed or controlled by normal planning, allocating enough resources for human development, taking care of the needs of the people, prioritizing things properly. If you do that, and if you increase the allocation of resources for health, education, housing, sanitation, hygiene, solid waste management, etc., then you can reduce poverty. For example, if potable water supply is there, if sewerage services are there, then the number of people falling ill will come down. Similarly, if you provide proper education, starting from primary level, then people will find jobs. But what we do is, we start from the top and allocate resources to projects which are not badly needed. Badly needed are at the lower level. But then, as I said, when things don't work, our donors and the rulers, they start talking of poverty alleviation. And for poverty alleviation, they will try to find shortcuts. Poverty alleviation, direct subsidies, maybe charity. When we had a dictator by the name of Ziaul Haq, he started collecting the religious tax known as zakat in Islam. And I think so far the zakat is so what is about 100 billion or 200 billion zakat has been collected. It started in 1980 and that was distributed also. So where is that money gone? Why the poverty has not been reduced? Then we had another prime minister started Benazir income support program as a direct subsidy. Okay, it may have provided some relief to the poor, but the poverty remains. So finally what we see is the poverty alleviation programs become a subsector. Like other sectors like health, education, etc., we have poverty alleviation as a subsector in the budget. Every year, we are running poverty alleviation programs. And then special programs also come from the World Bank, like social action program 1, social action program 2, and sometimes the titles change, sometimes the approaches change. The basic needs approach. I think in mid-70s or mid-60s, we had basic needs approach. That if you meet the basic needs, the poverty will not be there. The basic needs should be met through regular budgeting. It's part of the development. So, and resource allocation should be proper. People should be involved in the planning and development. People should be involved in the development. People should be involved in sustainability of the project. So see, Pakistan is a big country. If you don't have local government, should be responsible for some of the projects. And I have seen, for example, the public health engineering department, you see, keeps on making public health schemes. And at one time, I found 35,000 schemes were there, but no one was running. Because neither the public health engineering department made the schemes, they were responsible for running them. The municipal corporation, municipal bodies which were given the charge, they said, we had not asked for it, we don't have funds. The communities were not involved in planning, so billions of rupees were wasted. So it is happening, you see, in other areas also. So poverty, there is no, you see, when we say financing of the strategies for poverty alleviation, so question of financing strategies for poverty alleviation would not be needed if your regular programs are running properly, if your planning is good, if your micromanagement is good, resource allocation is good, and people are taken on board for which these schemes are prepared. I think I should stop there. Thank you very much.